So this is Baruch Fleischman here, the old sub at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. We're on page Shin Zion in the Sefer HaZohar, in the edition which is called Matok M'dvash, which means sweeter than honey. And so it is. Now, I've always been frustrated in the Zohar because I can't finish the Parsha. And I feel like in order to really see the whole thing, because I really, to a great extent, follow what my understanding from Rabbi Loza Shlomo Shek, Zatzal, of Rebbe Nachman, is to really start at the beginning and go right straight through. But it hasn't worked out that way. So instead, I'm going to try to learn this a little bit more carefully with what I can do during the week. So this is Parshat VAYIGASH, and that's what we're going to do. So it says, Rebbe Yehuda v'Rebbe Yosei Aruch b'Kfar Chonon. Now all of these words, so sometimes when you have the word Chonon, which is Lashon Chen, so let's see, it's a gematria of 108. 108 is a multiple of 18. I'm not sure exactly anything else I could say about it. But this is these two rabbis. They were in a certain town called Kfar Chonon. Adachava Yazve, so as before they really settled in to their hotel. Also, a man came. Now, I'm not sure which house it is. We'll see the Matok M'dvash get the exact right, but he says, so this man came, and he had with him a donkey bearer, I guess a donkey leader. What do you call it? The donkey handler. Kameh. And they went to a house. The Rebbe Yehuda, the Rebbe Yossi says, so up at that point, the Rebbe Yossi says to Rebbe Yehuda, got it backwards, Rebbe Yehuda said to Rebbe Yossi, so we learned this fact. This is what he says, this like the David Malka Chavachim, it's named Kasus, he used to sleep like a horse. Vishin says the hair and the amount that he actually slept was very, very little. Then how do he had the strength to get up in the middle of the night, that's midnight, just think about yourself, in such a small amount of sleep before that. And he didn't wake up even at the third of the night. I'm not sure exactly how that works. So we'll see. Let's look down here at the Matok M'dvash, and let me see if I can get the whole thing on the page. There it is. So here it is. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, Ha'arach of Kfar Chonon, ki Beis Tanoim. So these are great, great men. These are men through whom all of our Torah comes. He says, the Tanoim ha'elu nifgeshu b'yachad b'achsanya b'Kfar Chonon. So they met together there. So they weren't traveling together. They met each other there. They went out to eat. Maybe kan siper zechav defisha b'sofa inyan, and they start telling the story. Because at the end, Yevuchar b'chasapasa v'yigash alav Yehuda. Okay, so how does these things go together? One thing I could think, just without really looking into the Matok M'dvash any further, is that Yehuda is the Mashiach is descended from Yehuda. He's the king. So at any rate, what exactly is going on? These two people meet there. These two Tanaim, let's call them Tanaim, they're not just people. So they were staying over there in the motel. Let's get a translation. He said, Ba Adam Echad, a certain man came, and he had the burden, such as of a donkey, of one donkey, lefonav v'niknas the bias, and he went to a house. That doesn't sound like there was a donkey driver. It was him that he had a donkey, but it's a kind of unusual language. It's a ba adam echad, the masach hamor, and the burden of a donkey echad, lefonav, was in front of him. It's like driving the donkey, v'niknas the bias, and he goes into the house. Now, many times in the Zohar as we read along, and Mitzvah Shem we'll be able to start working a little bit more on this. You see this word chomor a lot. Now, chomer is lashon the chumrius, physicality. Of course, when you're traveling, they didn't have cars. They didn't have cars. They had donkeys. So this man came in, he went to a house, and he has a donkey. I think it sounds like he's driving a donkey with a burden on his back. Okay, let's go on. Adahachi ama Rabbi Yehuda the Rabbi Yossi. So at this point, Rabbi Yehuda, so I will translate. Betoch kach, in the midst of this, Shal Rabbi Yehuda the Rabbi Yossi. So, Tanina, now we learned this. Now they saw the man going with the donkey into the house. So we learned this Gemara. The David Malko have misnamnem kesush Derek Melech hoya kesnamnem like a horse. He slept like a horse. The Shane says the air. The horse sleeps very little. At this, it was a very small moment. Kashina says the same way that a horse sleeps. Vakasha, but this is a problem, he says. Now let's see what the Matok M'dvash wants to add this to try to understand it. Nira shechanich kahanacha b'shuta l'kushusaychu shebavadai choyu David the Melech cholach lishan k'minach ga'olam. So he says Nira shechanich kahanacha b'shuta kahanacha b'shuta. I don't know. The Kushai, so he's bringing an answer here. That for sure David HaMelech Cholak Lishan Kaminachak Oman, he would go to sleep just like everybody else. For us, Metachilas Alala, and then at the beginning of the nighttime, Vim came Yashin Karov L'Shei Shalosh Zech B'Zaman Rav. So it's not a small time. He went to bed. We think that he went to bed like everybody else goes to bed. And then when he gets up at midnight, he's already been sleeping for a long time. At least in a week, if we look at the hours, the days constantly are changing, but more or less like that. For the so there's a pkash of here havakam b'palgos lelia. So how did he manage to get up exactly at midnight? Now, I'm not sure exactly that little diuk we went in the Matok M'dvash is going to be helpful. Let's find out. Ich ata omer shedavid cho yukam b'chatzos laila. So how are we saying that? David got out at midnight. So I get up, I will get up to give praise to you. So he did. That's what he's saying. He's testifying. But this amount was very, very little. What amount was very little? This sus hardly sleeps. If even we say the Chagam Shezecha Be'enu Emes, that's a short line, true, the Hedya Chatzos Laila Akum, because it's not that he just slept a little bit. They're just trying to work this contradiction. He says that it seems like the Matok M'dvash is thinking that other places we see that looks like he slept quite a bit. That he would get up before the end, at the end of the first watch of the night, a daim kasha. That's even if you say that he got up at that time. The mishmaras of Rishona, who gam came kamishal, was also a bunch of lines. So let's say we divide the night. I think it's divided into 3 mishmaras. Maybe it's 3 watches, or maybe it's 4. It just eludes me right now. But at any rate, at the end of the first one, which once it gets dark and then we portion out the hours, there are hours involved in it. So therefore the Zohar says that he didn't get up at that way in 1/3 of the night. Below Shaykh Lomer, who was not Shaykh to say even if he woke up to get up at 1/3 of the night, which is the end of the first watch. Because you have to still say that after a very short amount of time, would get up from his sleep. So So we have just an idea of what we want to say that it's not a third of the light. It's just what wants to say was, okay, it was a very short amount of time. Well, let's see if we can get this next one here on the page. There we go. Oh, let's read the Zohar. So he says, Amar lebeshata the Lelia, at the time that night would fall. Havayasiv im kol raver v'besa. He would lit with all the great men of his house. V'dain dina the v'asiv v'mida the raisa, and he would make judgments. He was the king. And he would also b'mida the raisa, and he would be learning Torah. And then after that period, he would nod himself off to sleep, ad palgus lelia, until he got to midnight, the midpoint of the night. Become bepalgus lelia, and he would get up at midnight. Sushbachan, he pronounces it. And he would start working on with the service of his master with songs and praises. Okay? Now let's see what's going on here, what the Matok M'dvash says is going on. He says, Amar the Rebbe Yossi, the Rebbe Yehuda, Rebbe Yossi said to Rebbe Yehuda, Masha Kasev Chatzos Laila Akum Lahodos Loch, this phrase here, that I got up at midnight. Why did they do that? In order to give you praise. Ain't a Gavanda Shahoya Yasha and Bedachilas Alai, that's not trying to tell you that he was sleeping at the beginning of the night, Ad Chatzos until Chatzos, and then somehow he managed to get himself a Chan Chocha Peshut, like we had said, B'Shal Shalach, Chanocha. I don't know if I should have said this word Chanocha, I don't know so well. But it seems like the position, B'Shut, the Shalach, that you felt, Ki Lo Kach Hi Ahoya Ella, but it wasn't like that. He said, B'Shata the Achol Lelia, Chavayasiv Im Kol Rava V'Bei, so he would sit with all the great men of his house, and let's translate this. V'dain Dina V'Asiv V'Bida D'Raisa V'Shasha Niknas Halayla, when the night started, Hoyoshiv Im Kol Gadoli Besa V'Din Es Hadin, and he would make judgments. V'asik v'divi Torah, and they would work on the Torah. They would try to darshan out what's the proper judgment for the Torah ad samak lachatzas halayla, until they got near to the midnight hour. Then David HaMelech would go to sleep. Naim shinsei ad palgus lelia, so he would sleep his little sleep until it got to be midnight. And then after that, Havalayla. Begam bepalgul's lelia, v'is ar v'ishtadel polchanach demare b'shidem v'sushbecham. So he would get up in the middle. Oh, I'm reading the wrong place. Let me go back up here. So Eshinaso al chatzos leila kashir osa zaman moed, and how do we figure this? That's what he was saying here. And then he would leave. He would sleep his sleep as Shinaso ad chatzos leila kashir osan zaman moed, for like the amount of that very small amount hanikra pachas mishisim nishmin, which is less than 60 breaths. Now, I just know that 6 is a basic fundamental concept of Zer Anpin, or the male aspect. So I'm not sure 10 times 6, how that could work. That's me reading it into it, but I don't think it's going to go there. V'kam b'falgul's lelia, and then at midnight, v'isar v'ishtadel b'polchana demare, then he would start working on the deeds of his master. V'shira v'zushbachan, v'cham b'yad, he would immediately get up. V'chatzas alayla, v'nis ora v'ishtadlach v'avodas abora b'shiros v'sishbachos. So in regards to this, Amar chatzos layla, he says this phrase, Akum lahodos lach, I will get up, and I will give praise to you. Nimsesh Rebbe Yehuda Rebbe Yossi Shnechem Hebinu Ki Shisim Nishmim Haindul Zman Ma Shalshina. So let's hear what this is. These two great rabbis, Nimsa, Rebbe Yehuda and Rebbe Yossi, those two people, Shnehem Avinu, the two of them together believed, Ki Shiti Nishman, that 60 breaths, Haina Zaman Ma, this is some time, Shal Shina. It's considered to be, in other words, it's considered to be sleep. Now this seems like a big Inyan, or an Inyan that's got some has a richus to it. So this will Baruch Fleischman, and we'll take it up, Mitzvah Hashem. We'll have a chance to learn it tomorrow. Kol Tov.